People are gonna read the title and see the thumbnail, comment something random before even watching the video. This always happens. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe and First Descendant video. This is a video putting both games under a microscope, covering both the good and bad parts. Warframe has been out for 11 years, and yes, it did have a rocky start and has been improving throughout the years, while the First Descendant just recently launched and has been out for 3 months as of the release of this video. And what's the point of comparing the two games, especially a new game that just came out versus Warframe, a titan in its genre? Well, number one, content. Number two, First Descendant did take a lot of inspirations from Warframe. And there are Warframe players who are angry, saying things like, "Oh, why are you even playing this copycat game?" Or, "Oh, it's by Naxxon, bad game, pay to win." Or, "It's Warframe, but with ass." Okay, hold up. Whoever said that is clearly a moron and should be slapped till they can't feel their face. Have you seen Warframe and ass? Just saying. Like, have you seen Wisp, Ember? You really? And number three, I'm covering both games and want to share my POV because, believe it or not, people can play several games and enjoy different things about each game. Shocker. Also, if you don't like a game, then don't play it or get angry that other people are enjoying something you don't like. That's just weird. Or try to defend a game like you're married to it. That's even weirder. People need to chill. I'm only saying this because I've seen these crazy people firsthand. I have an unfortunate amount of hours on both games, and the novelty has definitely worn off, and I feel I can give you an objective and honest review when comparing both games, especially on what either game excels at, as there are things I love and hate about both games. So for those who look into Warframe content for the first time, they will feel overwhelmed by the complex movement, explosions, and all the crazy effects on the screen, and yes, it is overwhelming, and it can send your senses for a spin, as some of my friends couldn't handle playing the game because it made them motion sick. And when you look at First Descendant, it's very grounded and traditional to the core of its genre. You have sprints, dodge rolls that don't give iframes, that's stupid, jumps and double jumps that don't work sometimes, and a grapple mechanic to cover more ground. The effects are not over the top until you use a rocket launcher or a weapon that has ability effects that cover your entire screen with useless effects. It's so good that I can't disable that. That's nice. And for the people that say First Descendant looks exactly like Warframe, for those thinking that these people were talking about the similar systems they share, no! I literally had people say that the two games are physically identical in every way. They're clearly crazy and blind. If someone were to look at both games objectively, they would see they're vastly different. And Warframe wins when it comes to its art direction. All the environments, enemy units, all have their own unique theme and aesthetic. You can tell what map and enemy you will be facing as soon as you see the planet or loading screen. The subtle details that give away all the information you need to know on what you're going to expect. And that's why the Warframe art team goes so damn hard. Props to you guys. But when you look at First Descendant, the environments look generic. I have no idea what enemies to expect when I enter a map for the first time. The art direction was more focused on making the characters look good. Sorry. I meant more focused on making the female characters look good. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Granted, there are some areas in the game that look really cool, but I still feel the world is dead and boring. So what are the actual similarities of the games that people seem to compare? Well, you don't create your characters. You collect different characters that have different elements and damage types. The characters have a theme, 4 abilities, and a passive with a synergy of some sort. There are regular versions and premium versions of these characters. Prime Warframes and Ultimate Descendants. And for the Destiny players, that means Adept versions. However, in TFD, the Ultimate aka Prime Adept versions of them have better stats and unique augment mods that can only be used on the Ultimate variants. So it's best for you to level up the regular version of the Descendant for the Mastery XP, toss them aside, and invest into the Ultimate one. I mentioned Mastery rank. That's something similar to both games, but done differently. It's an account rank, and in Warframe you need to wait 24 hours for each Mastery test and rank up And if you fail, you wait another 24 hours to retry. While in Descendant, just play the game and rank up your mastery when it's available. No test required. I feel like there should be a test, at least. It would be more interesting and exciting, and some quests and areas should be locked behind mastery to prove you're ready for those activities. That's right, gatekeep the normies. And just like Warframe, you only get mastery XP from leveling up the item once the first time. There is crafting in both games. However, the craft times are definitely better in First Descendant for certain items. For example, in Warframe, Forma takes 23 hours, while the TFD equivalent takes 7 hours. Crafting a Descendant takes significantly less time than Warframe's. Imagine having to wait 3 whole days to use a new toy that you spent a decent amount of time farming. But that's where premium currency comes in. The downside is that you're limited to 5 crafting slots in TFD, and you cannot cancel the craft if you started one, which I find very, very stupid. But this is where the topic of microtransactions come in. I feel like certain things like crystallization catalysts, that's the Forma equivalent for Warframe terms, energy activators, potatoes, are ridiculously overpriced and should be relooked at. A catalyst is used to add a polarity, or a socket type in this case, to reduce the cost of a mod on your gear. Being the same price as a Descendant is absurd and stupid. Not to mention, when purchasing a Descendant, they do not come pre-installed with a Descendant slot or activator. Descendant slots are actually hard to obtain as a free-to-play player, actually impossible to obtain, because you can only get them if you spend real money. And I feel this is something they need to address ASAP. This will hurt a lot of free-to-play players. Hopefully they take a look at this in Season 1. However, you can farm pretty much everything else free-to-play in both games. In Warframe, there are relics. And in TFD, there are amorphous materials. Also shorten that name, it's too long and stupid. And you can see the drop rates and what you are getting. Unfortunately, unlike Warframe, you cannot share amorphouses with everyone to farm the same item. And the drop rates, they do suck. There are 4 ways of getting relics in Warframe without using the premium currency. And 2 of them are all RNG. Do a mission or open relic packs and get some random relics. There's a bi-weekly merchant that comes over and you can purchase specific relics from him, and resurging relics that can be purchased from an NPC that brings back sunset warframes. And in TFD, there are 3 ways. One of those ways is for low-tier amorphous. We won't talk about that. Doing dungeons guarantees 1 to 2 amorphous that has the item you want depending on the dungeon score, which I love doing. Guaranteed dedicated drops after completing activities is pretty damn good. And then you have outposts. Outposts are dog shit. Pardon my French. I'm still learning. But they're absolute doo-doo water. You infiltrate or blow stuff up to get the amorphous. There are 2 categories, an even number and odd number. The even number has a 25% chance of dropping by just killing the boss in the outpost. And the odd number requires you to stealth up missions, destroy the consoles without being detected, and then kill the boss to have a chance at getting the odd number amorphous. And it is the worst system in the game, absolute doo-doo water. And a lot of players will agree. I would rather do dungeons 100% of the time, but guess what? Certain weapons or descendants are outposts only. Yeah. But of course, in both games, if you do not want to spend time farming, you can just outright buy the Descendant and Warframe. In Warframe, you can buy literally almost everything, but you cannot buy weapons in TFD because that would actually be too much and pay to win in a PvE game. But yeah, you get it. You have ultimate weapons similar to Destiny 2 exotic weapons. You need to farm the weapons 5 times to enhance their unique ability, aka exotic perk. So 4 different pieces, 5 times to fully buff its perk. I guess that's where the subtle similarities end, as Warframe takes place in various parts of the solar system, on planets, moons, even spaceships, showcasing its beautiful and gruesome sceneries. While TFD takes place on Earth, right? I have no idea. I did not pay attention to the story. It was god-awful. No offense to the voice actors, but yeah, I muted all the voice audio in the game. I swear, I never wanted to punch someone in the throat as much as this. after hearing Bunny vomit out her voice lines. I mean, Warframe does have a fair share of annoying voices and characters. Thank God I can mute Ortis. And of course, Warframe's story is way better. Less exposition dump, great voice acting, but following the lore is obnoxious, since everything is so fragmented, as I have no clue what's happening in the Warframe story. But I do get to blow up bad guys, so that's cool, right? Now let's have a look at the gameplay and new player experience of each game. To keep it simple, they both suck. However, there are some things in both games that do it well. Gameplay loop of each game is just get stronger by getting new items to get stronger, so your account can get even stronger to get to the point where everything is just easy mode. I hope you get that. Warframe's intro quest explains movement and setting up your attacks pretty well. It lets you get the grasp on how you approach the game in different ways, and then leaves you to go out there and discover things on your own. The modding screen still doesn't make sense for any new player coming into the game. The modding tutorial is absolutely useless, with a massive essay and action posing warframes on the side. There should either be an actual small video imagery of showing you what happens when you place the mods or whatnot, or add intuitive quest lines that make you understand what happens when you place mods onto your build. For example, you know when you start the game it tells you if you press these buttons you can bullet jump, and soon after you're out there practicing your bullet jumps? Yeah, well, what if they did something similar to that when it came to modding, showing you what happens when you use base damage or elements on your weapons and how it affects your damage, and then follow it up with missions that have you explore the different avenues and nuances of modding. Then maybe people can get a grasp on what mods do. If I have to stop playing the game to look something up for something that should easily be explored within the game itself, then it's already a bad design. That's just me, because people don't want to waste resources that they've just acquired on something they have no idea about. Now, in First Descendant, kind of the same thing. Gives you simple press this button and this happens, the basic tutorials, but the tutorials go a bit further with different aspects of the game, like how to approach combat, enemy weaknesses, guns and abilities, the basics. Unfortunately, the voice acting is done so bad that you'll just have to read that. I don't have footage of this because you can't redo the new player experience tutorials unless you start a new account. The modding section is similar to Warframe, but also way more convoluted because there's so many different moving parts to making something work, because there are different sections of showing your stats, which can confuse people. The mods are so expensive capacity-wise that requires you to add a lot more catalysts just to fit an actual functioning build. And I find this really dumb. They need to retune the mod capacity big time in this game. However, you don't have to or can't own or craft multiple copies of the same Descendant to have different builds, because each loadout can have different sockets, so each loadout can be a diverse build. Unlike Warframe, where you need multiple copies of a Warframe so you can have very diverse builds for specific tasks. But here's one of my favorite things about TFT and modding and build crafting. There's a dedicated augment slot for your Descendant that does not interfere with the build. But here's the catch. You're only limited to one augment per Descendant build, unlike Warframe, and this can dictate your build heavily. And there is no helmet system in TFT. For those people who don't know what that is, in Warframe you can kill one of your regular Warframes, yes, and get a predetermined ability and use it on any other Warframe alongside an augment that affects that ability. So it can get crazy with build and theory crafting, but it all comes down to the same thing. Just do a lot of damage and you're good to go. In TFD, you have reactors, weapons, and components that affect your Descendants, and vice versa. Similar to Warframe with weapon stat sticks, Archon shards, you get it. And believe it or not, both games suck when it comes to explaining certain parts of their game. For example, Warframe can be even more annoying and convoluted because Warframe abilities don't even make sense when they're being described on their ability cards, and don't function the way you think they would. For example, this is Volt's third ability. It does so much more than what is shown, but to actually get information, you need to go to the tip sections just to see the additional info, and some of the info is wrong and doesn't do what it says. But some of the new frames have more in-depth explanations of their abilities. What I'm saying is there's no consistency. While TFD does show you 90% of the info you need on the ability cards, which is so much nicer, but there are things about the abilities that can be confusing, as they do have elemental affinity and damage type alignments, and can sometimes scale off other bonuses than the obvious ones. Now, Warframe is not a looter shooter. It's an action RPG that has guns, and using guns is optional and not a requirement. And only a few missions actually require you to shoot things, and you can shoot without using guns. Yeah, your melee weapons can even shoot. So there's that. When you play Warframe, you feel powerful. The movement, the powers just feel so damn good. Unfortunately, there are some doo-doo Warframes out there that haven't been updated in God knows how long. But what's funny is that guns are quite unique in the game. They all have a theme, archetype, and aesthetic that separates each gun from the rest. Like the Mutilus Cernus is an infested, weird, alien, creepy bow that deals AoE toxin damage. And then you have the Arcoplasmor, which shoots out a plasma wave that ricochets off of surfaces and enemy body parts. I mean, that's pretty cool already. Here's a cool thing that I wish Warframe did though. Pre-installed Rivens. And in First Descendant, it's your weapons substats. They come pre-installed, and all you have to do is re-roll them to get a god roll. However, they do eat up a lot of materials and gold. Now here's my favorite part that I always love to dog on. The topic of endgame does come up a lot when I talk about games. The sad part is Warframe has no defined endgame. There are no dungeons, raids, or anything to properly test all the gear and power you've accumulated. It's just the same missions that you play over and over. And the only way to get some sort of end game experience is to do endurance runs, essentially spending a lot of time in one mission to get to the highest level that you can achieve, to then end up one-shotting them. The sad part is that Warframe has been out for years, and they still haven't implemented something like it. I mean, Warframe did have an 8-man raid-like mission called Trials, but they removed that because it was really buggy and unstable. Although TFD just came out, we're already getting newer challenges. It has a base foundation of dungeons and boss encounters. We've gotten to the point where certain bosses are getting one-shot or even taken down super fast, but that's just the core game. TFD is releasing seasonal content every 3 months with a change to how the game works, similar to ARPGs like Diablo and Path of Exile, and even Destiny Seasons with its seasonal mods, where new mechanics and unique power-ups are implemented alongside activities that require a strong build to challenge these activities. Maintaining a seasonal model does keep the game fresh and does have you come back for more, but this also instills the presence of FOMO. Fear of missing out. Not sure what exactly the FOMO would be except missing out on the experience, rewards, or even exclusive seasonal weapons. While Warframe not having anything like this, taking ages to release content and not really keeping things fresh and exciting unless you take a long break to see the game change. However, this does have a comforting side to it, where the game assures you that you won't be missing much even if you take a long break. You can pick up from where you left off, but when you come back, you're met with a change of scenery, where new quests, frames, and weapons are added alongside the occasional nerfs and buffs to certain items or mechanics. This means it is easier to adjust to an updated game that you've taken a break from, but it does feel like something will always be missing. But yeah, these are the two games, pretty much at face value. Warframe is a game on its own that's unique in a way that can't really be explained in a couple of words or sentences. Imagine telling someone, space ninjas blowing stuff up. Can't really picture it unless you know what the game is. And the existence of First Descendant is a good thing, because people do want to try something different but still feel familiar with certain game mechanics. Not only that, it's also good for games to have competition. And First Descendant is not a Warframe killer. It will never be. Each game has their own thing to offer, and as a gamer, I like to explore those different aspects. Anyway folks, that has been it from this video. I do hope you've enjoyed and learned something from it. And if you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.